becomes more likely, but it will never reach.
One second. It doesn't need to be absolute. It doesn't need to be absolute. It doesn't need to be absolute. The fact of the matter is, if there are objective scientific principles that we can reproduce in a lab and they will repeat again and again and again and again and again, then that means that there is a reality to the world that is separate from our perception. In other words, our perception of order and rules in the cosmos is not simply something that our mind is creating, it is something that is actually there.
Look, Bob, I never said that our mind is creating it. I said that there are specific sets of rules, the specific way by which this universe abides, and our perception, seeing that it's limited, cannot possibly comprehend all the different rules and all the different ways by which it abides. It doesn't automatically mean that some transcendent being created those rules. We simply have no information over if he created it or not.
The question about our ability to perceive all the rules at the same time is a red herring. That's not actually relevant to the conversation. What is relevant to the conversation is your earlier statement, the one where you said that you cannot think of an example of order or rules in the cosmos, anywhere in nature, that isn't given by an entity. I.e., human beings create order and structure. Ants and termites create order and structure. Birds create order and structure. They all operate within rules. Now, if we can't think of any example where order and structure exist apart from an entity, bearing in mind that we can't use the cosmos as a whole because that's the very evidence that we're structured.
You mean life as entity?
I am saying that all that structure is everywhere.
Yeah.
And everything operates to structure.
I mean, yeah, there is a certain logic. There are certain rules,
How do you define
like
structure?
laws of physics or quantum mechanics. But my point is, those rules and those laws can't be completely proven. Exactly because for example, Einstein's relativity theory goes against quantum mechanics.
Let's use Einstein's theory. Right, so Einstein's theory is a mathematical formula, correct?
Sure.
Mathematical formula is a language, correct?
It's a codification of the world.
It's a language.
Okay, fine. Language is a codification of the world.
So it's a language.
Yeah.
Right. Language is a sign of intelligence, isn't it?
Well, we invented language to decodify the world.
So
you
you
get
answer
a
the
code
question.
to understand the world.
Pavlov,
No, you're doing a fallacy right now.
Answer the question I'm asking. The question that I'm asking is this. Is language an expression of intelligence?
Yes.
Right. Is it possible to express how the universe works mathematically?
I assume it is possible.
Of course it is. That's what physics is all about.
Well, we don't have all the explanations.
It doesn't matter about
and
all.
some of the explanations contradict each other.
One second. All the explanations are not necessary. What we have is a natural order to the cosmos, a code, a literal code that by our own reason and intellect we have tapped into. We are tapping into a mathematical structure to the universe, describing it mathematically. That shows that there is an intelligence behind it, because it is it is ordered
No, Bob,
by
you're linking language
code.
as a
code.
Okay, whatever. Language, as I said, language is a codification of the world we see.
Yes.
So it is a code, and
Thank
language
you.
is a code.
Thank you.
Okay, good. We agree.
And
about
is
that.
language
And,
a sign of
maths-
intelligence?
Yes. And
Thank
maths
you.
is
And
also
does the
a
world
code. Maths is also
is
a
the
code.
cosmos working to a structure, a code?
The universe is working by a certain logic. But we humans, creatures that do have an intellect, we invent codes like maths and like language
Is logic a
to
sign of
understand
intelligence?
the world.
Is logic a sign of intelligence?
Well, not necessarily.
So there is. Can you give me an example?
Intelligent beings can be very illogical.
Yes,
logic
of course.
is something that doesn't have to do with intelligence.
Is logic a sign of intelligence?
Okay, wait. Are you talking about what exactly are you talking about now? Because
I'm
you're
just saying,
linking two things
because
that are very, very different from each other.
What I'm saying is that it is completely systematically coherent to conclude that when you find structure and law that is describable by a code that is imprinted into the very nature of things, that it is therefore clear that those things indicate an intelligence behind them.
Well, again, that's the Watchmaker fallacy.
No, that's just what atheists like to describe as a fallacy.
Because it is.
Explain to me why, if I look at a watch and I conclude that there is a watchmaker, explain to me why that is a fallacy.
Okay, because
we've got the example of a watch.
Okay, I'll explain.
Show me why it's a fallacy.
The watch is a complicated mechanism
Agreed.
created by intelligent beings.
Thank you.
Humans.
Yes.
The world is a complicated mechanism.
Yes.
And you are making the conclusion, okay, the watch is complicated, the watch was made by humans. The universe is complicated, the universe was made by an intelligent being.
Yes.
It's a false conclusion.
Why is it?
Because it might not be like that.
Might not be. Right.
Yes.
But if
I'm not saying it's
one second.
not.
Hold
That's
on one
why
second.
I'm an agnostic and
You see,
not an
and
atheist.
this is why this kind of philosophical argument is so fundamentally flawed. Because everyone would agree that if you had a watch, that there was a watchmaker. Mm-hmm. Because its intricate design, its various mechanisms. You'll have to forgive me, the pollen's getting on my throat.
No, it's fine.
That various all indicates a creator behind it, and no one would argue with that premise. But then when we simply take the same logic, sorry, and you look at the complexity of the world around us, I've got hay fever, guys, so I apologise. If anyone's got any water, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you look at the complexity of the world, and then do not conclude a creator, I would say that is a failure of logic. Because what you're saying is, and I think that often the reason why people don't want to accept the logical conclusion of a creator is because when you accept the logical conclusion of the creator, it then horribly begins to follow that you might have to live your life in a certain way, and most people don't want to do that. They want to be independent and live to themselves. And actually, it's more that emotional
reaction.
reaction.
Belief in a creator is to be forced to abide by the law of a creature you have no power against, you have no power to oppose, and have no choice about it. That's exactly what the belief in the creator is.
So my point to you was that actually, rather than good logic underpinning your argument, it's actually coming from an emotional place, a place of the heart. As in, I want to live for myself. I don't want to live for God, because if I live for God, I fear that God may ask me to do things I don't want to do.
That's a different question. Now let's talk about
I think it underpins the
how
failure
logical.
of this philosophical
all
argument.
The knowledge we have is based on our senses.
Yes.
It's with our senses that we perceive the world around us, and that we start to get an understanding of that world. Do you
Totally
agree?
agree.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So we are beings that work on senses.
Yes.
And it is because our senses are flawed that I do not believe that the logic you're talking about all the universe, everything being made by an intelligent being, is absolute. It's not because it's not because I think it's illogical. According to human logic, it is logical, but it's because I don't think human logic is absolute. Exactly because all of the knowledge we have is based on something that is flawed inherently.
Yes. Right. Hold on. In terms of the fallibility of man, I totally agree with you. Man is a fallible creature, and thus our senses can be deceived. You know, I looked up at the sky today, I thought it was going to rain, I thought it was going to be cold, I find myself now wearing a jacket and a thick jumper, and I'm now too hot. You know, my sense of sight deceived me into thinking that the day was going to be one thing when it turned out to be something else. However, in terms of empirical study about the natural world, the idea of intricate structure is an undeniable fact. No one would argue otherwise. And actually, the more we look into it, the more complicated, the more nuanced, and the more intricate that structure appears. Now, if we were confronted with an intricate structure, like a pair of glasses, like a camera, like a microphone, like a bag,
Like a watch.
we would conclude a maker to those things. Why would we conclude that? We would conclude because they stand out from in terms of their organizational ability. They point towards a particular purpose.
Yes.
Their particular purpose indicates a creator. Right. Well, the particular purpose of the cosmos is to give life.
That's what it looks to us, yes.
It is absolutely a fact.
It's not a fact.
A life-giving universe is the only one possible.
Okay, that's not a fact, and let me tell you why it's
Go on,
not a
explain
fact.
why it's not a fact.
I will refer to one of my favorite philosophers, David Hume. As he divides knowledge into 3 different parts.
Yep.
The most certain of them is relations of ideas. For example, a triangle has 3 sides, 1 + 1 = 2.
Yep.
It's the codification of the world resulting in absolute truths. But seeing that we are codifying the world, the link between that code and the actual world is where the flaw comes to the relations of ideas.
Yep.
So they're not absolute, even though they are the most certain knowledge we have, the logical knowledge. The second kind of knowledge is matters of fact. For example, you're standing right here besides me, he's standing here, we're being filmed right now. We can tell that by our immediate observation. But the matters of fact are flawed because our senses are flawed, and all of the matters of fact we have come to us through our senses, and thus we cannot trust them absolutely. And the third kind of knowledge, I'll finish real soon. The third kind of knowledge is relations of ideas. Now this is where your argument comes in. Relations of ideas, not relations of ideas, observe the regularities. Relations of ideas was the first one, apologize. First one, relations of ideas. Second one, matters of fact. Third one, observe the regularities. Now, observe the regularities are the matters of fact of the past that we have been observing many different times, and thus we predict that in the future something similar will happen. For example, every time before, when I took a step forward, I felt the ground beneath me and I moved forward. But that's the problem with the observed regularities, because they are even more uncertain than the matters of fact. You see, when you're walking down the stairs and you're not looking, when you miscount the stairs, you might take a step when you're expecting there to be another step and there isn't one. That means that your prediction was flawed. And that means that the prediction that seeing that the prediction you're making is, okay, every single thing that's complicated that we have observed has had a maker. We can observe the maker, we can see the maker, we can prove it. But the universe, we can't see the maker, we can't prove the maker. However, seeing that every single thing before us had a maker, every single complicated thing, we assume that the universe will automatically have a maker. It's not illogical, but it's not certain.
Out of 1,000 things that you have seen that that are complicated structures, like the camera, all the devices, all of them have had a maker.
You mean like the technology?
Yes,
humans,
all of them. Right.
Are the
so in terms of, because the problem with Hume's radical skepticism is if you follow it logically through to its conclusion, you can't be certain of anything.
Of course.
Right. But the real way
that's why they call me Mr. Uncertain.
But the real way that we understand things isn't through simple empiricism. We have intuition. We have an emotional self. We have a sense of our own history. We have cultural history. We understand the world through stories.
Of course.
If I ask you what you did today or what you're doing now, you'll tell me a story. If I ask you what you did yesterday, you'll tell me a story. If I ask you what you're going to do tomorrow, you'll tell me a story. The human mind thinks in stories. It thinks in narratives. Right. Those narratives come from a cultural milieu in which certain questions are proposed to the mind, and certain categories of mind are informing our perception of the world. Okay, that's just how we think.
Okay.
Right. So, if we are tutored to think in a certain way, it means that we will have certain categories of mind that therefore cannot encapture all of the available evidence.
Absolutely.
And I would say that that is the fundamental flaw of Hume's narrative. Is that he constructs a narrative that is so restrictive to phenomena, so restrictive to everything, because he was writing at the time of the height of the scientific revolution. So the cultural questions that he were faced were connected to empirical science and the limitations of positivism. Okay? However, this understanding of human nature is itself flawed. Because there are many things that we can be certain of as true that are not empirically verifiable.
Fair enough.
Such as your mother's love. Would you agree your mother loves you?
I would agree.
And would you agree that that's not empirically provable?
Empirically? I mean, absolutely provable.
It's not provable through empirical...
You see, I don't believe in absolute empiricism.
Neither do I.
Good.
Right. But the point is... Okay. Hume was criticizing. He was trying to demonstrate the limitations of what we could know through our
Limitations
senses.
of knowledge, exactly.
Yeah, he was demonstrating a limitation of knowledge, but a limitation of knowledge in a particular context, and that particular context was the scientific revolution. But human nature is not defined by Western European questions of the Enlightenment. Human nature is broader, bigger, greater than the questions of the European Enlightenment.
Okay.
It's a particular social, cultural milieu. And that's the flaw with Hume's narrative, is he assumes that the Western way, the Western liberal way of thinking about everything is the best way of thinking about everything.
Not necessarily, but look, Bob, what you're saying, the argument you're using, is a sword that cuts both ways. Just as, and the difference is, I do accept the possibility of me being mistaken when you don't, because you follow an ideology that works in absolutes. There is absolutely one God that can absolutely be proven. I don't function that way. For me, if you can give me a better logical explanation of how the world functions, fair enough, I will accept it. But what you're doing now is showing uncertainty in my ideology, which is based on showing other people that no ideology is certain.
What I'm showing to you is that
basically you're not.
No, what I'm
with
showing
me.
to you is that the narrative that you're following is an incoherent narrative.
It's not incoherent. There's a possibility of
allow me
flaw,
to explain.
but you're not showing
Firstly,
unnecessarily.
you
what the flaw
infer
is.
you infer to me this idea that I never make mistakes. I make plenty of mistakes.
No, not you. The ideology you follow.
No. That I make
The God you
plenty
have,
of
you
mistakes.
follow.
Well, actually, if you actually understood the Christian worldview essentially says that human beings are flawed and will make mistakes. That's the whole point of the Christian faith.
And yet they have absolute faith in their belief.
Yes, we have absolute faith in Christ. That's what we're called to have.
If you have mistakes, how come you can have that absolute belief?
One second. In terms of what is certain, we can have reasonable certainties based upon logical steps. And the logical step that I say is this: 1, language indicates intelligence. Code is a language. There is a code to the physical structure of the cosmos. It is there in physics. It is observable, it is replicable, it is something that we can codify in mathematics, and we do so often. A perfect example is E equals mc squared. That is the formula that is used partly to help all the satellites go around the Earth that allows all your phones to work. In other words, Einstein had a theory. We used his mathematical description of how the universe worked to understand how it worked, to predict how it would continue to work, and then we based an action on that working that is allowing your mobile phones to work right now. Right, so it's connected. Okay, well, whichever, anyway, the point of the matter is, there's an example of a mistake if he's right. So the point of the matter is that if we are clearly seeing a code in the structure of the physical universe, it is a fair conclusion to draw that there is a code giver.
All right. First of all, as I said already, the code is not offered to you by the universe. The code is something you invent to understand the universe better. The code was invented by humans. Language was invented by humans. Math was invented by humans. To understand the laws by which the universe abides to. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, but I do get what you say, but the code is only successful if it's describing a reality that is there, and we know that the reality is there because from this coding we can predict what happens next and thus base judgments on what we do about it and replicate it in a lab.
That reality was done by an intelligent being. The code was done by an intelligent being to understand the reality. Right. But the reality is not the same as the code.
No, the code itself is describing a reality.
Of course.
And therefore the reality is codified. It works to a law.
No, Bob, look.
It works to a law. That's why you can codify it. You couldn't codify something that was lawless.
A logic law by which the world abides doesn't necessarily have to be created by an intelligent being.
So give me an example of that where your argument is valid. Give me an example of a law, a structure, hasn't come about through a creator.
Well, I can't give you an example where it happens, but I can tell you that it's not certain that it does happen like you were saying that it does.
If all the evidence is saying that there is structure to the universe, right? If all the evidence says that wherever we find structure, like within our own world, within the sociological world, the anthropological world,
Fair enough.
yeah, if all of that is showing that where there is structure and law, that has a giver.
It's an observed regularity.
Yes, absolutely. It is an observed regularity.
It's logical,
so
but it's not absolute logic.
To doubt that, you have to give good reasons to doubt.
I give my my imperfection as a good reason.
But you're still operating two laws. Your nature points to something beyond yourself.
It doesn't operate to something beyond myself. It operates to certain rules by which the universe functions.
Do you have a sense of absolute morality?
No.
You don't. So, do you agree with? Let's use an example. Okay. Do you agree with the idea that someone can?
Sorry?
Do you?
Absolute morality exists.
Yeah, I believe so.
But why don't you prove
On
it?
what basis? Yeah, I want. In what basis?
Contributed. Okay, well, listen to me then. Listen to me. Don't ruin
Unfortunately, this guy heckles. This guy does this every week.
Is it?
Right, guys.
Is there no freedom of
So,
speech?
yeah, he can
I know
heckle if
it's
he wants
not
to.
allowed to say
You
our
can heckle if you want
opinion.
to. Let's
Are we not
Don't
allowed
worry
to say
about it.
our
I know
opinion
what's going
freely?
on. Don't
Right.
worry. I had this conversation many.
Because
Okay.
phone are my friend.
If I don't, let me get caught in the trap, and I will get debunked here.
Right.
If I don't, I'll make the mistake and I will learn from it. But don't ruin the conversation for other people.
Thank you. Anyway, well done, Pavlov.
I'm lifting the level.
So, no, you're lowering the level like you do every week. So, in terms of the moral structure, here I'm arguing that our nature points towards something beyond simply the natural world. And one of the evidences that I've given to that is the idea of structure within the universe. Another evidence that I've given to that is the idea that by codification we indicate law, governance within the cosmos, and that both of these indicate a lawgiver, someone, a designer behind that. And another evidence that I would give to that is our very nature reaches out of our bodies to something that is metaphysical when we reach out to moral absolutes. Now, lots of people say they don't believe in moral absolutes, but when tested, they usually do. So, for example, do you believe? Let's use the constant trope in such debates. Do you believe that the Nazis' conduct towards the Jews in World War II was morally reprehensible?
That's a perfect example that
Yes,
you've
please.
given me right now, and I thank you very much for it, because this is the perfect opportunity for me to actually show that my perception of morality
Yep.
is actually more functional than the absolute morality. Hitler thought he was doing the right thing. He was certain that his morality was absolute and the Jews were evil people.
Yes.
It is because Hitler didn't have any doubt in his mind. It's because he completely ignored all imperfection of him as a human that he killed those people. And that's what will happen when people put a certain justice as an absolute. They will become corrupted by it without ever realizing it.
So, what is your actual? So, are you? I'm sorry. I'm
I
not
think
clear.
what Hitler
Did you
is
say it was morally
completely
right or morally wrong?
dysfunctional. If we
Was it
see,
morally right or morally wrong?
I don't see the world in terms of morally right, morally wrong.
Now,
I
this-
see the world in terms of functionality.
So it's function. So if there is a function to be served by what Hitler did, it becomes what, morally right?
Listen to me. What Hitler did was inherently dysfunctional.
Inherently dysfunctional.
Yes.
What was wrong with what he did?
Bob, don't go to the wrong. I don't
So
delve
there was
with
no
right
wrong.
and
Don't
wrong.
condemn.
Are you saying
But
that it
okay,
wasn't
wait,
wrong what he did?
Let
It's
me explain this properly, because you're putting me in a tight spot right now, in which you make me say what Hitler did was not wrong. So what? What is right? No, there is no absolute right.
Right.
There is no absolute wrong.
Yeah.
There are things that are more functional for humanity and are things that are more dysfunctional for humanity.
So
And
Nietzsche's
exterminating
philosophy.
people based on their race is something absolutely and utterly dysfunctional. You remove the taboo of exterminating any race that disagrees with
But
you.
you've just created a moral paradigm right there. You have just said that if you do not oppose something, you set a precedent by which it can be repeated. And that is an appeal to morality. You haven't appealed to function. You've just appealed to a utilitarian ethic.
Yes.
Right.
Utilitarian ethic.
Utilitarian.
But that's not an absolute morality.
That is an appeal to morality. So can you say, one second, can you say,
distorting what I said.
Can you say that it is always wrong to rape children?
Bob, once again, you're putting me in a
I'm just asking you a basic question.
Bob, that's a fake question.
No, it's not. It's a perfectly valid.
Bob,
is it a
raping
is it an invalid
raping children is utterly dysfunctional.
Come on.
It is utterly dysfunctional to rape a child, but it's not wrong.
Bob, there is no absolute right or wrong.
There is no absolute right or wrong.
You see, you're appealing to the public right now.
I'm appealing
you're
to
doing
your
the same
sense
as the
of right and wrong,
no, Bob,
but you're
Bob,
suppressing
Bob,
right now because you know
Bob,
raping children is wrong. You just don't want to say so. It's pride that is governing your argument right now.
Okay, Bob, let's take this step by step. What is a child?
Right.
What distinguishes a person who can who's of age and a person who's a child who's underage?
Right, let me address that point. Firstly, I think you focused in on the wrong thing. The question is, we should be talking about rape, not age, because rape of any person is wrong.
You will see why I focused
rape
on the
of any
age
person
first.
is wrong.
You will see why I focused on the age first.
So age is irrelevant to rape.
No, answer the question.
I was just using the most emotional example. Right, but I'll answer your question. A child is someone who is emotionally, physically and spiritually unable to give consent to the act of, well, in this sense, is someone who's emotionally, physically and spiritually unable to function alone.
Okay. So is a person who's paralyzed a child?
No.
Right, just contradicting
Hold
what
on
you said.
1 second. These are special conditions. If we look at a child, the maxim of a physical attribute has to be, they all have to be there. Emotional, physical and spiritual. Someone may be physically incapacitated but emotionally capable. So someone who's handicapped and maybe has to go around in a wheelchair still may have all their mental faculties. A child is someone that has none of these complete faculties in maturity.
Yeah, they might have the mental faculties or they might not.
So now,
and that creates an exception to the rule that you showed
Now I've
me.
answered. You seem to be suggesting that there is a way to legitimize the raping of a child.
I'm not surprised that you would take it that way.
So
let me
answer the question.
explain my opinion without you putting me in a tight spot.
Is it morally wrong?
I don't delve into morality, Bob. Stop putting me in a spot where I need to abide by your moral code. I do not abide by your moral code.
No, I'm asking you, by your moral code, do you think it's wrong?
By my moral code, I think it's wrong. But
Wrong.
I don't see.
There we go.
But I don't see my moral code as an absolute.
Yeah.
What I do see in the world is the purpose of life, that all things must grow or die. And if we start raping the children, it is utterly dysfunctional for our species and it will completely ruin us because humans are weak creatures.
Right, so what you've done again, now please notice, and this is the point that I was making, is that human nature grasps at morality. He did say it was wrong. And to be fair to
According
Pavlov,
to my morality.
According to your morality, exactly. He did say it was wrong. And that's the point that I'm making, ladies and gentlemen, is that our human nature reaches out to something that is above and beyond simple natural concerns. It reaches out to, let me finish, Pavlov.
Is that morality absolute?
Let me finish. Right. And that reaching out to something that is above simple natural concerns is a reaching out to something that is metaphysical. And if it is reaching out to something that is metaphysical, then that means it is something supernatural. It is above the natural. Now, he did make another appeal to a different kind of ethic. He appealed to social Darwinism. Did you all hear that? When he said that the point of life is to continue and it's about the weak and the strong. That is social Darwinism. If you don't believe me, go and look it up. You'll see that it matches up well with what Pavlov said. The problem with social Darwinism is that what it values is strength in life. The Übermensch, as Nietzsche called it. The Aryan race, as Hitler called it.
Wait, are you?
1 second.
You're now going to call me a Nazi?
I didn't call you a Nazi, and I'm not going to.
But you're
to be
going
fair,
those steps.
let me be honest. So, because I don't want to mischaracterize Pavlov, I've talked with Pavlov lots of times. I think the reason why Pavlov is unwilling to call a spade right now is because his ego has got the better of his temperament. And he doesn't want to admit that he does actually function to a moral code, and that moral code is imprinted in his heart like it's imprinted in all of you. Now, if my argument is true, that in all of us there is a moral code, a sense of right and wrong, a sense of ought, as C.S. Lewis put it, a sense of what we ought to do. When we say ought, we are appealing to something above nature, because there is no ought in survival of the fittest. There is only I am stronger, you are weaker. But if we say that I have the strength to dominate you and I don't, because I ought not to do so, then what we are appealing to is something beyond simple, natural ways. We're appealing to something that is metaphysical, that is outside of nature.
Are you finished?
Yeah. So he's not a Nazi, he's
So
just
haven't
proud.
finished.
He's just proud.
Are you finished? Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's not.
He's not a Nazi,
Okay,
he's just
wait.
proud.
Let's. I am proud, but this. Fuck! I lost my thing. Oh no, I didn't. There it is. Never mind. Never mind.
Show the logo.
Thank you, my lord. Thank you very much. So. Oh man, I lost my point now. That looking for that thing. I have it again. I have the point again. So, Bob, I do indeed have a morality of my own.
Yes.
I never contested that.
Yep.
What I do contest, what I do usually say is that I don't like delving into moralities, because I do not believe in an absolute morality that functions for absolutely everybody. I do not believe in this ingrained morality in our heart that you so eloquently appeal to the feelings of the people, because I don't believe that such a thing can be proven by any means possible. I do, however, believe in the functionality of morality, and that there are better moralities than others. Raping children is not a morality that has any kind of sense to it. Humans have nothing to gain with it and everything to lose with it. It will make humans become very corrupted. It will make humans become degenerate. And that degeneration appeals to the human weakness inside them that will destroy their societies. Because humans do have free will. Humans do have an ability to choose. They have their own will. And that is why I don't believe in God, because I have my own free will and I will use it as many times as I can. Now, for example, other beings that live in a society, like ants, it's a perfect society, but they have zero free will into them. They have one morality, the hive mind. Their hive mind is absolute, there's no question about it, but they are machines. They are practically machines programmed to do exactly the same thing over and over again. Humans are not like that. Let me give you just two questions, and with those two questions, I think we can reach a lot more than what we're kind of going in circles here. Let me give you two questions. First of all,
Pablo, stop moving around that way, fam.
turn the camera. Okay. So the two questions are going to be: when all humans are exterminated, will there be any morality?
Are you asking me now?
Yes.
Yes.
There will.
Yep.
Second question. If the only humans that remain are the humans that believe in raping children as the morality,
Yep.
is that the morality we have?
That might be the morality they have, but that is not moral.
But there are no more humans to defend any different morality.
Okay.
That's the only morality that exists.
Now, here's the flaw. Here's the danger of an atheistic, agnostic worldview. You heard it articulated perfectly just now by Pavlov. If universally we agree that something is right, it is right. And that is the danger of an agnostic and atheistic perspective of the world.
That's
No,
exactly
Pavlov,
what
I didn't
oppose.
interrupt you. I did not
That's
interrupt
exactly
Pavlov.
what
I did not
oppose.
interrupt you just then.
Go ahead.
Don't interrupt me. Right? Pavlov has just, in his two questions, demonstrated the fallacy of his logic.
What's the other option?
That just because we see the world a certain way, therefore it is right. And that is the fundamental problem with Western society right now, is that we have no authority greater than our parliament, and our parliament is making immoral laws, such as redefining marriage, such as permitting abortion, such as allowing divorce freely and at liberty. The reason why our code, our sense of ought indicates a creator is because even within such a society as Pavlov describes, where everybody agrees that raping a child is good, I would contest.
That's a terrible argument.
I would contest. That was Pavlov's argument.
Jamie.
That was Pavlov's argument.
If he's going to talk about rape, if he's going to talk about rape,
When your enemy is making a mistake, don't interrupt
He's
him.
quoting Waterloo. He's quoting the film Waterloo.
Now, friendly
And
enemy.
that was
discussion,
Napoleon.
not an actual
That was
enemy.
Napoleon's comment to Wellington. So, it's a good film, by the way.
It is.
Yeah,
I really
but I
like
told you he was quoting Waterloo. You see, the thing is, you can come to the corner and you can come out with nice little rhetorical catchphrases. But the very thing that makes us human, one of the things that makes us most human, is to explore that sense of ought, that sense of right and wrong, and to follow it where it leads you. And if you follow it, I'm convinced it will lead you to God. Notice Pavlov has said multiple times in this debate, I don't like to delve into morality. And he did say that. I don't like to delve into morality. And he also said, I don't believe in God because I have free will. In other words, what he's saying is, which is what my original criticism of him was at the very beginning of this debate, is that he doesn't want to believe in God because he fears it will constrain his free will. And that is the reason why he wants to dismiss the overwhelming evidence that points to God's existence. Overwhelming evidence, codification and structure in the cosmos.
Observe the regularities.
We are able to tap into by our intellect. Intellect speaking to intellect.
that is not a good... That is
Jamie!
Two. The atheists are rattled. I don't blame them. So,
No, I just don't like the argument to be interrupted by outside parties.
That language is an indication of intelligence and that the universe has a clear code. A clear code, and code is a language.
Bob, come on, just wrap up
Three.
your point. I have my own things to
Three.
say. You can't just
That our
toggle all
very
the
sense of ought, our nature pushes towards something beyond simply questions of survival and breeding, which indicate that our spirit is reaching outside of our flesh. So back to his analogy of a society that agrees and has decided that child rape is wrong. I would say that people within that society, when faced with the pain that they're causing to those children as they rape them, would be forced to reflect on that sense of ought and would conclude that raping a child is wrong. Okay. Which indicates a code greater than simply we making an intellectual decision.
Okay, thank you. You finished your point. Good. Now this is the perfect example of the pot calling the cattle black. It's a perfect example of that. I said many times that I do not believe in an absolute morality, and that's exactly why I would not be part of that society that would think that their absolute morality of raping children is correct.
Yep.
Now you tell me, where's the difference between your morality that you believe to be absolute and their morality that you simply because you don't agree with it, because admittedly it has big flaws, why do you believe yours is absolute and theirs is not? What is it in you that's so special that you can come to absolute conclusions when those people cannot come to those absolute conclusions?
Okay, I'll answer that. That's a fair question. It's a fair question, ladies and gentlemen. The question was, why is my code of morality better than another person's code of morality? And to be clear, Pavlov is working to Nietzsche's philosophy.
So what?
1 second.
But so what?
One second.
You keep saying
One
that.
second. Pavlov is working to Nietzsche's philosophy.
I can quote Hitler. Doesn't mean I agree with Hitler.
1 second. Pavlov is working towards Nietzsche's philosophy. He's been influenced by Nietzsche's philosophy. The fundamental problem with Nietzsche's philosophy, this idea of zero absolutes, is that it is self-contradictory. And I will demonstrate that by simply asking Pavlov to answer one simple question.
I know what it is.
Is it absolute that there is no absolutes.
Is it absolute?
That there are no absolutes.
It's not absolute because there might be absolutes we don't know about.
Right. So his argument, you begin to see now how
It's
his
an argument
from
ignorance,
your
self-accepting ignorance.
Your
Bob.
argument breaks down completely.
Bob, my argument doesn't
You have
break.
just argued.
My argument
Pavlov,
doesn't break
Pavlov,
because a wise man's
Pavlov,
doubt is
don't-
infinitely
Pavlov,
more
we can
worthy
have-
of
Pavlov,
consideration than
Pavlov,
a
we can
fool's
have a shouting
certainty.
match, but that wouldn't be beneficial.
Fair enough.
Let me
Just
finish
finish
speaking.
your point.
Right? Pavlov was trying to argue that there were no absolutes. But when questioned, he argues from an absolute. And something that is rational.
didn't.
Yes, you did.
No, I didn't.
You said there are no absolutes.
No, I didn't.
Is that an absolute statement?
No, it's
It's
not.
on.
An
Did
absolute
any,
statement.
ladies and gentlemen,
Because there might be
for anyone that was here, did he say there are no
But
absolutes?
it's not a yes or no question. It's a maybe question. It's a question answered by I don't know because I don't have.
Are
the
there
answer.
absolutes?
Bob, tell me. Are there absolutes?
Yes.
Yes, they are. Where's the proof of that absolute?
Okay. Now answer my question rather than just
fallacious
asking.
answer.
Do you believe there are absolutes?
There might be.
There might be absolutes. Bingo. You see, he's arguing against his nature, and that is why his argument is collapsing. Because our nature tells us there are absolutes. And when we try to use our reason...
Does just speak to you?
1 second. When
just
we...
speak to you when
1
you pray?
second, Pavlov.
You said no
Control
No, but
yourself.
wait, Bob. Okay,
Pavlov,
fair enough. No,
let me
wait,
finish
wait,
my
wait,
point.
Bob, fair enough.
Let me finish
I
my
will
point.
let you finish your point.
Pavlov,
but
let me
notice-
finish
but
my
no- but
point.
Notice, but
You're
notice
rocking,
how
Pavlov.
you are
Pavlov.
dragging the conversation,
Pavlov.
and you're not
Pavlov.
giving me any time to
I will,
answer
but
any of your
you keep
questions.
interrupting. Be quiet. Let
Fair
me
enough.
finish my
Finish
point and then
this
you can
point.
reply.
Give me time
But
to
you keep
reply.
interrupting,
Fair
Pavlov.
enough. Finish your point.
Don't be like the Dawa team. You're better than them. So,
Well, I could say
so
the
you're
same to you.
better than the Dawa team. So now, the reason why Pavlov's argument breaks down is the same reason why Nietzsche's breaks down, is because language descends into meaningless when you start making arguments like there are no absolutes. That very statement is a statement of absolutism. And that is why that logic collapses. And that is why Pavlov is arguing against his nature. So, if you want to reply to that point.
I will reply to that point. Are you sure you want to get in the conversation? Bob is
Say with me, mate.
Bob is a pretty well-spoken guy. Are you sure you want to
Are
get
there
in the
absolutes,
conversation
Pavlov?
now? Are you sure? Maybe you guys want to come in the
Are
conversation.
there absolutes,
I don't
Pavlov?
think. Wait.
Let Pavlov reply. I want to hear his answer.
Let me reply once again.
Yeah.
I don't know if there are absolutes
Okay.
because my knowledge is not absolute.
Right.
Do you understand? No, wait.
No,
Come
no,
here,
okay.
come here.
He's moved
Come here,
here,
bro.
No,
come
leave
here.
it. No.
Don't
Deal
just
with me.
don't just throw
Don't-
me
don't run to him.
catchphrases and
Deal with
expect
me.
everybody. Wait, Bob, I'm speaking. I'll let you speak. Let me speak. Don't just throw me catchphrases and to completely destroy my argument in front of the people. Because I am telling you something that you might understand if you open your mind for a second. Just for a second, and you might understand where this is going. There are no absolutes. Because Bob, stop it. Bob, wait, stop.
There you go. There are no absolutes.
Are you the
Is that
Dawa
an
team?
absolute,
Did you just
Pavlov?
turn into the Dawa team?
Did you know me and Bob on the
I think you resemble the Dawa team a
Me
little
and
bit
Bob are on
now.
the same team, man.
Dude,
No,
they're just laughing at the fact you've just said there are no
Bob,
absolutes.
you
That's a
did-
funny
no,
statement.
wait, you told me not to
It's a
interrupt,
funny
now you keep
statement.
interrupting.
Go on, I'm sorry.
Are you going to let
Go
me
on,
finish or not, guys?
Let
do you
the-
want actually to listen?
let the guy
or
run
do
off
you
a
want
cliff.
your
Let him hang
personal
himself.
bias to be proven to you again and again and again? Like in Commedia dell'arte.
Go on,
I
go
can
on.
go all full Capitano on you.
Come on, Pavlov.
Bob,
Come on.
I gave you space. Let me give you my space.
There are no absolutes.
There are no absolutes according to my flawed knowledge. But there may be absolutes I do not know about. Now you can laugh, your laughter is the sign that you're closing your eyes, ears and mouths. You do not think for yourself because there might be absolutes that we simply don't have knowledge about because our knowledge is not absolute. I do not think you can achieve absolute knowledge because your perception is limited. The way for you to achieve those absolute answers that might exist doesn't exist because that's a perfect way, that's an absolute way, that's a way of your perfect perception, and I do not have perfect perception. And the big argument here is not that you have that perception and I don't. It's not that I doubt my existence, I'm living in a world of shadows. It's that I notice my flaws. I see that I am not perfect, and you think that you're perfect. And that makes your answers worse than mine.
Can I reply? So he said, he points the accusative finger, and as the only person debating him, I have to assume he's pointing that finger at me. Now, it is true, our Lord Jesus Christ did say, be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. But the whole Christian narrative is coming to the understanding of how imperfect we are in comparison to the perfect divine. And the whole point of one of the central disciplines of the Christian faith is that you take time to reflect upon yourself, to examine yourself, to see if you remain in the faith, as the apostles call us to do, to acknowledge that we have sinned. Sin means to fall short. To fall short means to not be perfect. So his accusation against the church, against the Christian community, that we think ourselves perfect, is nothing but a characterization based upon a man whose rhetoric has collapsed before your eyes. And the reason why it has collapsed is because, like so many other Nietzscheans, he is arguing against human nature. He's arguing against reality itself. Language descends into meaningless the moment you start saying everything is relative. Because if you're saying that everything is relative, you have just made a self-contradictory statement. And something that is self-contradictory is not true. Truth is that which best describes reality. Truth is that narrative that best fits with reality. And the Christian moral ethic is simply, as Christ said, to love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and to love your neighbor as you love yourself. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And that sense of ought, that I should do unto others what I would want them to do unto me, is written in all of your hearts. All you need to do is look within, and you will see that that sense of ought marries up with Christ's teaching, which marries up with divine revelation, and therefore that divine revelation is describing reality accurately. And that is the very definition of truth. Pavlov, if you're saying that you're not sure if there are any absolutes, let me ask you this. Are you saying it is true that you cannot know what the truth is?
The best fit with reality. Perfect. I couldn't agree more. The best fit with reality.
Yes.
It's the best explanation, but it's not the only explanation. It's not the perfect explanation. That is what I'm aiming for. Not for a perfect explanation, not for an absolute answer, for the best answer. That is what I believe in.
I've got you.
I don't believe in perfect answers like what you believe in. I believe in the best ones. Now repeat your question again so I can answer.
Right, so I just want to point out that Pavlov just appealed to Platonic philosophy. He appealed to the world of ideals.
Repeat the question, man.
1 second. Pavlov just appealed to the world of ideals. Anyone who studied Plato knows about the world of shadows and the real world, the metaphysical world. When Pavlov says, I strive to find the perfect, he has just indicated once again.
I said exactly the opposite.
Once again.
I strive to find the best because the perfect doesn't exist.
Right, so let me ask you this question again.
Ask me.
Do you believe that it is true that you cannot know the truth?
If I think it's true that I cannot know the truth.
Yes.
Considering that our senses are
Everyone else
flawed.
gets it.
No, I did get it. Why do you think I'm going around the question to explain it better?
I'm listening.
To not just give you the answer you want, like Hashim when he asks me, "Oh, are you sure you exist?"
Yeah, but Hashim's just a troll that walks around Speaker's Corner.
But you're doing a similar thing.
No, I'm asking you a very fair question based upon your argument. You have just argued that we cannot reach certainty about absolutes. So now I'm asking you, can we know the truth?
In our current state, no.
Right.
In our current state.
And is that true?
But we may come to another state in which we will understand reality. Absolutely.
Is it true what you've just said? That we cannot know the truth?
I think it is, yeah.
There you go.
I think it is.
No, at every turn, Pavlov, his linguistics break down.
Of course, they don't break down, Bob. Because I
just
accept the possibility of me being wrong.
You just said it's
and that is
true.
why what you try to ridicule here. You're trying to abuse that acceptance of me being wrong because you think that everything you believe in is absolutely correct.
No,
I don't.
Again, you've mischaracterized me.
I haven't mischaracterized.
You've just mischaracterized. Here's the difference between you and I, is that I believe that reality is accessible and communicative.
Are you sure of that?
Yes.
Absolutely sure.
I am absolutely
sure.
You
One
have
second. Absolute knowledge.
Yes, that's an absolute certainty
that
I have.
Certainty. You have absolute knowledge.
But here's the thing. Both what you are saying and what you do communicate that you think the same way. You're just rhetorically trying to argue against your better nature. And you're doing so because of pride, not because you're dealing with the evidence. Reality,
exactly the opposite.
One second, reality is communicative. If you don't believe me, stamp your feet.
Bob,
if you don't believe that reality is communicative, stamp your feet.
It is because of
because
my
I
pride.
Listen.
One
second,
you're
Pavlov.
mischaracterizing my pride.
One second, Pavlov. You can correct me later. You can correct me later.
Okay, there you go. You're hogging the conversation
One
again.
second. Pavlov is arguing from the idea that we cannot have communicative interaction with reality based upon certainty. I am telling you, you can. You can decide who's more accurate in the description of reality. My simple experiment to prove to you that reality is communicative is to invite you to stamp your feet. My other experiment that I invite you to do to see if reality is communicative is to look within you and to examine the sense of ought within your heart and to see what it tells you. And I'll tell you what it will tell you. It will tell you that you should do unto others what you would want them to do to you. Now that means
look inside your heart.
Yes.
Look inside your heart.
Not some hippie way. Not some hippie way.
You're always appealing to emotion.
That's not an emotion.
You're not appealing to any logic, any reason. You're always appealing to emotion and to jokes.
No,
jokes about. Are you certain that you're certain? Are you certain of your truth? No,
to
I'm
examine
not certain
themselves.
of my truth because I accept my flaws. Now you think that humankind is flawed. We are flawed. That's what Christianity tells us. And yet you do believe that you have some perfect answers. That the God you believe in is the absolute God, and there is no doubt about it.
Yes.
How can you come to that absolute conclusion if you yourself, if your perception is not absolute?
Right.
That is the contradiction in your argument.
Here's the difference between mine and Pavlov's approach. Is I don't need absolute certainty to believe.
Yes, you do.
No, I don't.
That's what you've been preaching here
No,
all the
I
time.
don't. No, I don't. What I have said, whereas Pavlov contradicts himself because on the one hand, he wants to say there are no absolutes, yet he is seeking absolute certainty before he can believe, which is rationally self-contradictory. On the next hand, he's saying that we cannot know what is true, and he is stating that as a truth. And this is the whole flaw with Nietzsche's philosophy. This is why Nietzsche swept away the sky of morality in his philosophy and tried to rewrite the moral code by appealing to the Übermensch. And this is kind of, he hasn't got there yet in his own
that's
thinking.
where you keep pressing my face into, ooh, you're a Nazi, you're a Übermensch.
I haven't said you're a Nazi.
Ooh.
Nietzsche wasn't a Nazi.
Well, that's the logical conclusion
No,
of
Nietzsche
what
was
you're
not a
saying.
Nazi.
No, but you did say before,
His sister
Übermensch,
sold him to the
and then you
Nazis,
spoke
but he
about
was not a
Hitler.
Nazi
And
himself.
then you asked me
Right.
if I think
Put
what
your hand
Hitler
up if
did
you've
is
actually
right.
given lectures on Nietzsche.
Bob,
me.
Bob,
there you go.
Bob.
Right.
Bob, you know what you're doing right now. You're doing exactly the same thing that Adnan did to you the other day, which was a very stupid argument, and you're doing it right now. He asked you, have you ever read a book about Janissaries? You had, I did. And he said, which one? I don't remember the name. And everybody laughed. Everybody around you laughed their asses off. No. Because it was funny. But it doesn't mean
Pavlov,
you don't have a good point.
You're not.
And that's exactly what you're doing
right now. I am pointing out the inherent contradiction of your argument.
There is no inherent contradiction.
If you say there are no absolutes, you have just made an absolute statement.
Bob, I'm saying I do not know about any
there
absolutes.
You go. And is that
there
true?
might be some absolutes.
Is that
that is the truth achievable to me,
right,
which is
there
not
we go.
necessarily
That's a much
the
better
absolute
statement.
truth.
Right, that's a much better statement. And this is the problem.
Okay. No, this is the problem with
this
religion.
Is the problem.
You try to answer with simple answers complicated questions.
They are complicated questions, but the problem with the Enlightenment and the whole of Enlightenment philosophy is it cuts us off from the basis of being. And the moment you cut yourself off from the basis of being, you start to lose any coherent narrative by which you can understand the full experience of being human. Which is why lots of people make mistakes when they try to address moral questions through scientific inquiry. They are two different kinds of question dealing with two different kinds of topic. But human beings exist in both. We are moral beings and we are physical beings. And these two things need a narrative that incorporates them both. Because that narrative that incorporates them both is the one describing reality the best. And an atheistic, agnostic worldview cannot do that. And that is why it is not true. And that is why a theistic perspective is true or truer.
But because we can't answer with simple answers complicated questions. Is that what you're saying? Seems to be that way.
No, I'm saying that these are complicated questions. And the answer is not simple. The characterization that they are simple is the folly that you're making.
Bob, what I'm making here is that I'm doubting my perception.
Yes.
And everything we have goes through our perception to
Are you standing on solid ground right now?
Bob, my perception tells me so.
Right.
Now imagine this.
Is that a true statement?
No, wait. Imagine this. When you die, you will wake up.
Yeah.
Can you prove to me that won't happen?
When you die, you wake up?
Yes, you will wake up after you die. This is a dream. You will wake up when you die.
You're asking me if I can prove it.
Can you prove that that's not what will happen?
From scripture, yes.
You can prove it to me.
I can prove things from scripture.
Prove it to me.
Right. So the question is about authority. The question is about epistemology. What Pavlov is appealing to do, he's appealing to an empirical worldview. An empirical worldview based upon empiricism. One of the advantages that I have over Pavlov is I actually studied philosophy. Yeah, I don't know if Pavlov is
right there.
Right,
one second. Right there. I gave you examples of many different philosophers.
1 second. I wanted to take him down Descartes' cogito ergo sum. Because I'm not quite clear if Pavlov actually thinks he's here or not. Because logically,
go full down on me. Go full down.
No, logically, your argument is running that direction.
No, Bob, you're trying to ridicule the argument.
No,
you're not trying to debunk.
Oh, do you believe you're here?
No, Bob, listen. I asked the question first. I want you to answer my question.
I will answer that question.
What is the proof that when you will die, you will not just wake up?
I will
in the
answer that
world?
question. I will answer that question. Okay, so in terms of Christian belief, our narrative of the world is that after death, your souls will go to a place, heaven, if you are a saint. They will go to Hades if they are not. And on the day of resurrection, your body and your spirit will be reunited. Now, he asked for proof. But in our culture, when someone says proof, everybody's mind runs to the idea of empirical proof. Put your hand up if that's where your mind went when he said proof. Right, that's where your mind goes. Why?
I don't see any hands.
Well, I saw two.
Now there is.
Seriously.
Just to contradict
when he said
evil atheist,
did your minds go to scientific
immoral
proof?
One.
You're not evil, mate.
No one's called you evil.
Yeah, you just think I'm misguided.
No one's called you
reality.
Stop trying to play the victim. Stop trying to play the victim.
You know, it's hard not to play the victim when you try to ridicule me and not the argument.
Your argument is flawed,
debunking the argument.
I am debunking the argument. Because Pavlov's argument is based upon the idea that the only way we can know anything with certainty is through empiricism.
No.
Right, thank you. Now, if you accept that we can know things
My
that
idea
are
is
not...
that we cannot
Pavlov,
know
why are you
certainty.
interrupting? Do you want me to
Okay,
answer the
go
question?
Ahead, go ahead, just answer the question. You're just going around the bush a lot.
Right. Pavlov's argument is that we cannot be certain. So let me ask Pavlov a question. Are you certain about that?
No, I'm not.
Do you see? It's a mindset that just runs itself round in circles. It's an unhealthy mindset. It doesn't work. It leads to rational contradiction. It leads to a just collapse of everything that is real.
Okay, Bob, look at me.
So now let me ask you
look
another
at me for a
question.
second.
Are you here right now?
No, look at me.
Yes.
Look at me. Do I look like I'm having a mental breakdown?
No one's described you as such.
No, but that's where you're going. You're saying it's unhealthy, it's bad,
It
it's
is.
Evil, it's immoral.
You can't say that raping
where
a child
she-
is wrong. I can.
No,
that's
Bob,
the difference.
immoral in my morality, but my
In your
morality is
morality.
not absolute.
Okay, so
That's the morality I think
what basis
would be
can
the
you
most
say-
functional and
on
the
what
best
basis?
for humanity.
On what basis can you say it is wrong?
My personal judgment.
Your personal
Exactly
judgment.
as you will choose the religion you follow.
Right.
Your
So if my personal
judgment.
judgment says that it's okay, as we've heard members of the Dawah team argue here at the corner, haven't we not had Muslims argue that it was all right to have sex with a 9-year-old child?
They said worse things.
They've said worse things. So how do you decide which moral system is better? If it is just
With
about
your
opinion. What?
With your judgment.
With your
People
judgment.
need to be taught the right kind of judgment.
Dude, you're all over
of
the
good-
philosophical map. You really are. You really
Thank
are.
you, thank you. Well, now you know that I
Yes.
did study philosophy.
You've
At least
you've
I've got
dabbled
that.
in it. You've dabbled in it for sure. But the point is, yeah, I want to cut to the heart of something, right? And I'm just following the logic of your argument, because every time I've pressed you, your epistemology has retreated. You keep retreating in your epistemology. Your epistemology, by the way, for those that aren't initiated into philosophical language, is the way that you know what you know.
The philosophy that
Do
talks
you
about
do
your
you
existence.
Do you
That's
do you,
epistemology.
no? That's existentialism.
No,
Do
okay,
you know? Do you know? You're trying to argue with someone who's actually
No,
studied
listen,
philosophy.
epistemology
Tell me,
has a lot to
how
do
are
with
you certain that
existentialism.
you are here right now?
According to my senses, I think that I'm here.
According to my senses, I think
Yes.
that I am here.
I think that's
But did you not argue earlier that your senses can be deceived?
Of course they can.
So how do you know that you're here and that your senses are not
My
deceived?
existence can be something different from what I perceive it as.
Right. So basically, he's going to retreat to cogito ergo sum.
It's no retreat. No. Listen, Bob. Bob,
You
perceive
how do you know
me.
you're not in a
Bob,
lab with
Bob,
tentacles inside your
Bob,
brain
Bob,
telling
Bob,
you
I'll
that
let
this
you
is
speak,
sensory
let me
here?
speak. I'll let you speak, let me speak.
So answer my question.
I'll let you speak, let me speak. Now, I am not sure that the way I think I exist is exactly the way that I actually exist. Because my senses are flawed. Now you think I exist in a certain way, and he thinks I exist in a certain way, and him, and him, and him, and him, and him. Every single person here has a slightly different perception about how I exist. But none of us, not a single one, has a perfect perception of me. Not even myself. Because there are things about myself that I might not notice, that other people do. That is why I'm saying I'm not sure about my existence, because I'm not sure if my perception of it is exactly how it is.
Right, 1 second.
Hopefully you can understand this
just
better
got-
than Hashim.
No.
Please understand this better than Hashim.
I think that the reason why you have literally just said two different things.
Which are?
One, I exist. Two, I'm not sure I exist.
I'm
So-
not sure of the way I exist.
Right. Okay. So here's the difference
The devil
in
is
our
in the,
worldview.
in the little things.
Here's the difference in our worldview. Here's why everyone can be certain that Pavlov exists, because independently, all of us are experiencing Pavlov.
Maybe I'm dreaming and he doesn't exist.
Exactly.
Yeah, you
Maybe
might
some
be
dream.
dreaming,
Thank
but what
you.
about Leon? And what about him?
Maybe
Soco,
I'm
allow
the
me,
one
man.
dreaming and none of them exist.
Right.
Maybe you're
Solipsism.
Hold on.
dreaming.
Maybe you're dreaming
It's
and
a,
none of us
solipsism.
exist.
Solipsism is a philosophical fallacy.
It's not a fallacy.
Ladies and gentlemen.
That's the scary
Philosophy's
thing
not
about
the answer.
ladies,
about
one
solipsism.
one
You
second.
can't disprove it.
Ladies and gentlemen, you can be sure that Pavlov exists, even if Pavlov isn't sure that he exists, because we are all independently experiencing Pavlov, and narratively,
You're a comedian, Bob. You're a comedian.
we are all comprehending Pavlov, even in his most incomprehensible statements.
You're a comedian.
So the
How
point.
come after all that study of philosophy,
point-
you
Pavlov,
still
you're
resort
interrupting now.
to jokes
You're
instead
in-
of actual
You're
philosophical
to entertain the
discussion?
populace.
No,
So-
you're the one doing
so,
that.
circus-
You're appealing to
circus and bread.
laughter
Circus
from
and
the-
bread. No, don't.
that's you.
Don't look. I'll just say it now. Don't believe me because I'm funny, or don't believe me because I'm funnier than Pavlov. The Dawa
yeah,
team, the Dawa team do that in the corner. They appeal to humour because they know in our culture we like someone that's funny, and if we like them, we're more willing to listen to them.
Well, I think in every
it's a
culture
very clever
they like
trick.
somebody who's
But
funny.
I'm now exposing that trick because I don't want you to believe me because I'm funnier
You're
than
exposing
Pavlov.
it by committing
I
it
want you
yourself.
to believe me because your own cognition, your own reflection, your own experience, your own reality confirms that my description of reality is more accurate than Pavlov's description of reality. Pavlov's description of reality is that he is not even certain of the way that he exists. I can tell you that collectively we can be certain of the way that he exists.
You can.
He exists as a human being.
How can you be certain of that?
Because you're a human being.
How can you know that?
Because you look like a human being, you sound like a
Look,
human
sound.
being, you behave like a human
I can
being.
touch you like we can feel
you
each other.
touch me like
Yes.
a human being.
Senses.
Like Mohammed
Senses.
Hijab
Matter of
actually.
fact.
Touches.
Like,
What do you mean he touches you?
Yeah, he
Like
touches.
this. No homo, bro.
This is,
no homo.
this
no
is
homo.
this is Mohammed
No homo.
Hijab's
No
style
homo.
of
No homo.
interaction.
Wait. No homo.
So,
no homo.
so the thing is,
matters of fact.
so matters of
Matters
fact.
of fact are not
yes,
absolute knowledge.
right, but here's the thing. Here's the fallacy in his argument. He's saying that you can't be certain without absolutes, but he's trying to say absolutes don't exist.
We can't perceive any absolutes.
So if you can't perceive any absolutes, the talk of absolute is ridiculous, and thus saying that you need absolute certainty before you believe is a nonsense.
Well, they might be absolutes that we just can't see.
1 second. You said your argument
Or
is
maybe
based.
there are
Pavlov,
absolutes that we don't know that are absolutes.
Pavlov, you are arguing that we cannot have certainty without absolute certainty. Is that a fair representation of your
We
argument?
can't have certainty without absolute certainty.
Yes. Is that your argument?
Well, to a certain extent, yes.
Okay, right,
Without
stop.
perfect perception.
1 second.
You can't have
Stop.
certainty.
Right, and this is what I said at the very beginning of this debate. Our nature reaches out of us to
nature.
something that is beyond us. We are reaching towards the absolute because we are programmed to do so by our Creator. It is written into the genetics. Now, he said that we can't have absolute certainty without absolute certainty.
Why do you trust something
But
transcendent
then,
to you?
Pavlov, just
Something you have no
Pavlov,
perception of.
You're rocking, mate, and you keep interrupting.
Rocking.
You just stop
Go
for
ahead.
a second
Okay.
and listen to what I'm
Go ahead,
trying
go
to
ahead,
say
go ahead.
to you.
Go ahead.
You're saying that we cannot have certainty without absolute certainty, but then he is saying that absolutes are beyond our perceptive ability, which makes his criterion of certainty a nonsense. Because he's saying I can't be certain without something that I can't perceive. That's a logically incoherent epistemology. Your epistemology has to make sense. And I am saying to you that you do not need absolute certainty to be certain.
How does that work?
Because
You don't need to have absolute
You
certainty to be certain.
because
So you assume you're certain without actually being certain. So you
No.
lie to yourself.
No, because certainty does not need to be absolute. You do not need absolute certainty to believe. And I'll prove it to you. Okay? I'll prove it to you. Okay? And to all of those that fit into an empiricist worldview, if you are stood here today, not that Pavlov is, but if you're stood here today,
Ad hominem.
and no,
Ad hominem.
no, you're going to agree
And then
with
you
me.
say you're not a joker.
You're going to agree with me. If you're stood here today and you believe that you can only believe something once it is proven, empirically proven, scientifically proven, I would ask you these questions. 1, who proved that to you? 2, what evidence did they use to prove that to you? And when did they prove that to you? Because what actually happens in human epistemology is nothing to do with the scientific model. It's to do with what we call meta-narrative, what the postmodernists call petit narrative. It is the idea that our culture informs our categories of mind. And our categories of mind open or close to us certain questions and possibilities. Pavlov has bought into a meta-narrative of radical skepticism from David Hume and the idea of relativism from Nietzsche. Now, those worldviews are inherently self-contradictory.
Still didn't see any contradictions in them, though.
Because Hume postulates a certainty that we
he
cannot be certain, and Nietzsche postulates that nothing is certain. And that's why you're contradicting yourself. Because you're taking two philosophies that you don't understand and you're trying to mesh them together, and the narratives contradict.
Go get me. Tell me I don't understand it, and thus I am wrong, without actually proving why I don't understand it.
Because they're self-contradictory.
Right, just say that you know philosophy, I don't know philosophy, and thus you can speak and you can be listened and I can't be listened to. But
Everyone's
you're doing
listening to
exactly
both
the same what the Dawa team is doing. Exactly.
Everyone is listening
point by
to us.
point the same. And I don't blame you. Because to fight them, you need to actually use some of those tricks. But don't use them on me, because I do know those tricks. And that's exactly why,
deal with my
why I
argument.
don't speak to them anymore.
Deal with my argument. Handle the ball, not the man.
Once again, I already explained this, but let me explain this one more time. What is it that you want to know about my certainty? About my certainty that is not certain. Am I certain that uncertainty is certain? Laughter ensues.
Right.
Let's speak about this.
I am asking you the question.
There can be.
Okay.
There can be unknown certainties, and that principle of unknown certainties is my ideology. There might be certain certainties that we don't know about. Do you know what I mean? It's because our perception is flawed that we can't come to those absolute certainties. That is why my logic is not self-contradictory. Because I accept that God, your God, for example, might exist. I just don't think it's an absolute. Especially because your belief in God is a relation, or is an observed regularity. It's because you see every single complicated thing was created by somebody sentient that you think that all complicated things were created by somebody sentient, even though you never saw that creature that created everything that's complicated. And that's why my argument does hold up. Is it certain? No, it's not. But I accept the possibility of there being certainties beyond my comprehension.
Right. I think we should do one more round and wrap up, because the arguments are now becoming circular.
Sure.
So here I'm going to do a wrap up for me, and then I'll let Pavlov have the last word.
No,
so
that's all right.
I want to be a gentleman.
I think you should take questions.
And Pavlov is a nice guy.
Yeah, take questions.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll take questions afterwards.
So my point is this, right? You have two possibilities of trying to conduct yourself in the world, presented here today. One is agnosticism. The idea that I can't be certain about what I'm certain about, and I'm uncertain of whether there's other uncertainties to come. I just don't know. And so I can't say whether there's right and wrong. I can't say whether there's true and false. I can't even be sure that I exist or the way that I exist. Or, two, you can have an understanding of epistemology that is based upon narrative, that is based upon the fact that the human mind works in stories, and then you can examine the stories that you encounter in this park, like you just have today, and ask yourself which of those stories corresponds with history, corresponds with physics, corresponds with metaphysics, ethics, corresponds with that sense of ought within yourself and that sense of your own mind. Because that which corresponds to reality, if you believe that reality is communicative, that you can engage with reality in a meaningful way, that narrative that best describes reality is the true one. And empiricism alone does not describe the fullness of existence. Agnosticism does not describe the fullness of existence. And then the question is, which of those theistic ideologies does so? And I would posit that the Christian ideology, the Christian narrative, stands head and shoulders above the rest. And I have very good reasons to do so, that I've argued various times here in the park. Anyway, Pavlov, you look after yourself.
I mean, don't you want me to...
I thought you said you didn't want to. It's all right, go on. Yeah, go on. Yeah, go on. Go on.
I mean, if you want, I can just...
No.
Okay,
have the last word.
Fair enough. Let's finish this.
Is it a crash course in philosophy?
Something like that. Something like a crash course in philosophy. Now, I never said that I can answer everything. I never said I want people to follow me. I never said I'm a messiah. I never said the ideology I bring you is an absolute that you should follow or else you are wrong. And that is exactly why I would argue that my ideology is better. I do not try to achieve an ideology that all the world will be united on and all the world will stop war and live in peace and prosperity completely. I do not look for a utopia. I do not look for something perfect because I don't think it can be achieved. The very nature of mankind is against that perfection, because perfection, endless peace, is death. That is what it is. Because the purpose of life, the very meaning of life, is its imperfection. Our limits, our flaws, make us exist. If we erase those lines that limit us, that show us in the world, we will stop existing. And that is the only perfection that I can see in existence. And how convenient that religious people would call their God as perfection, when perfection is that very in existence.
Okay, any questions? You've been so patient, go on.
Well, I've got a few things I wanted to say. There's a lot of things I wanted to say, but I don't know if I'll have time. First of all, to some extent I agree with you, but to some extent I agree with you as well.
Fair enough.
So I don't see necessarily contradiction between what you guys are doing. To bring in philosophers, Immanuel Kant said that time and space, in other words, all perceivable universe, is not separate from human consciousness. So human consciousness, the human mind, perceives time and space. There's no such thing as time and space outside of the human mind, outside of the human perception. So to some extent you're correct, and to some extent you're correct. So it depends on the context of what we're talking about. So things like, for example, moral relativism. Again, to some extent you're right, to some extent you're right. So for example, in some cultures, say in some Islamic cultures, it's okay for a 12-year-old or a 13-year-old to get married. To our culture, that's child abuse, and they cannot give consent. In their perception, it's not child abuse. So that's where relativism comes in, you see. So in their perception, a young girl of 12 or 13 is a mature woman. And for us, even though that may sound evil, so in that sense, you would be correct in terms of moral relativism. But in the sense of a universal sense of right and wrong, if there is such a thing, you would say that's a horrible thing. So there is you could say there's a personal sense of right or wrong, but there may also be a universal one which we don't necessarily know about. But another good example would be the Roman Empire before Christianity. Before Christianity, having gladiators kill each other for entertainment was morally okay, but when Christianity came, the moral values changed. So you would be correct in terms of there's no innate morality, because the moral values changed when Christianity came into the Roman Empire. Because in the Roman Empire, when a child was born and the child was ill, they would leave it to die.
I was asking for questions.
Oh, yes, sir.
No, but please answer that.
Right. Yeah, all he's done is restate some of the points I've already addressed.
What's your point on that point, what he's saying? Because it makes sense.
The reason why it doesn't make sense is because there are objective reasons. We can now categorise objective reasons why a child of 9-year-olds is not suitable to have sex with a 60-year-old man, as Muhammad had sex with Aisha. And so there are objective reasons why we can also say that a 12 and a 13-year-old are wrong as well. And these are based upon studies of human development and child development. And so yes, there were times of ignorance in European history when Christians were also marrying children. But in terms of our sense of what was ought, it was universally accepted that you don't have sex with a child. It was accepted in Europe that you don't have sex with a child. The definition of a child was wrong. It needed to be modified. It needed to be changed. That's based upon studies of human development that were not accessible back in the medieval period. 1 second. In terms of, and thus there is an objective reason to say that any attempt to relativize that question, based upon what we know about human development, and any attempt to justify a 64-year-old man having sex with a 9-year-old child, is flawed. And therefore, that is an objective, not a relative perspective.
I disagree.
Okay? Now, you also kind of I mean, that was the main point that I picked up on.
Well, what about the Roman Empire before the
Well, I've just spoke.
the sense of morality for
Yeah, you
them?
talked about Kantian philosophy.
No. For them, the sense of morality
You talked
was
about Kantian philosophy.
it's okay for
1 second.
conquest.
You talked about Kantian philosophy. Kant talked about the noumenal and the phenomenal. You know that distinction that he makes?
No, I don't know.
All right. Okay. So this is actually what Kant said about time and space. Okay. What he said was that there is the phenomena that we experience in our perception, but then there's the noumenal, the thing as it is. Okay. So epistemologically, Kant is saying that we receive information through a filter. And that is not something I disagree with. I would say that filter is the narrative that we are cultivated into by our society, which in the Western world is a rationalistic, imperialistic model. Okay? Which Pavlov is a perfect example of because he's an agnostic. Okay? Now, he's been culturally informed by his society. There's nothing new about what Pavlov is saying. Nothing. Okay? Now, 1 second.
Is there something new about what you're saying?
What? 1 second. No, God forbid. Now, in terms of reality, what I'm saying is that the way that we understand reality is through narratives. So the question is not whether we can scientifically prove a point, or whether we need to have rational doubt, skepticism. The question is, what we need to have is an understanding of the narratives that inform us, and then to ask ourselves the question, which of those narratives explains reality the best? Please note, not absolutely.
Thank you.
I said the best.
Thank you.
Now,
that's important.
Yeah,
I do agree with that.
It is important. But here's where we differ. I'm saying that when you identify the narrative that explains reality the best, you can have certainty. You're saying you can't.
What you mean is context. So, for example, certain things are absolute. So we know that water would always boil at 100 degrees.
Unless it's at a different pressure.
Yes. We know that the angles of a triangle would always equal 180 degrees. But that's within the context, within certain contexts. Within other contexts, we will never know something.
It's relations of ideas.
Yes, we will never know, for example, how fast can a human race 100 meters. That question cannot be answered.
There is an upper limit.
How do you know? How do you know that another human cannot break that upper limit?
There will be a physical limit.
What about the best chess player
And
that could ever be?
I'll tell you what that physical limit is. Right? Obviously. What? Right.
said that about
No. There is a physical limit. There is a physical limit. No mass can travel at the speed of light. Because as you approach the speed of light, your mass increases, and so you will never reach the speed of light. So even though a human being will never, ever get anywhere close to the speed of light, there is a physical limit.
There's a physical limit.
Which means that there is a code that we are constrained.
That's true, but
It's a logic. The code is done by humans.
No, it's an absolute fact.
Within the limits of rational thinking, within the limits of the known world, that question cannot be answered. Within rational thinking, nobody's talking about the speed of light, but within rational thinking, because you can always somebody come up with a 1,000th of 1 second faster than the other person. But how would
No,
you
there
know?
will be a physical limit. There will simply be a physical limit.
Would there?
Yes.
Well, I mean,
it would rely upon some optimum human being becoming a sprinter,
what
but
is infinity? Somebody could say, what is infinity plus one?
this is just a nonsensical question. It's not even related to what we're talking about.
That certain things can be answered, certain things cannot be answered.
Yes, certain things
Such
can
as,
be answered.
What is infinity? Cannot be answered.
Yes, no,
Such
infinity is plus one continuously.
That's not, because there isn't a definite.
Infinity is a continuum that doesn't stop.
It's in the word.
Can't be
mate.
perceived.
It's kind of implied in the word
It's
infinity.
in the word.
It's actually in the word.
Well,
It's in the
okay,
word.
sorry guys, but no shit, Sherlock. I know
Exactly. Exactly.
What is the square root of -1? What is the square root of -1? Nobody knows, but you use that. Yes, but they use that in maths all the time. The square root of -1, but there's no answer to it. But
That's just a nice catchphrase you throw out. It's not actually related to anything.
Some things within
Sorry,
reason.
can we allow other people to ask questions? Is there anyone that wants to ask a question based upon the topic that you've just heard me and Pavlov talk about?
But Bob, if you don't mind, just to point to you a different
Then
point.
in that case,
Oh,
guys,
no,
I am
not
going to
this
let
guy.
you guys continue the discussion, and I'm going to go.
I've got a question.
I think
I've got a question. Could you explain to us or tell us what faith means?
faith means.
Yeah.
There are different definitions of faith.
Not in your interpretation.
Not
what?
In my interpretation, there are different definitions of faith. For example, you can choose the interpretation of believe without seeing, which is the faith in God. the belief in something you have absolutely no perception on, which is something I don't agree with, as you might have noticed through this conversation. There are other kinds of faith, though. There's the faith in the evidence that you can see, which is also a sense of faith. Seeing that the evidence is not absolute, you need to have some faith in it, but that's where probability comes into play. And that's the difference between me and an absolute moral relativist, because I follow probability. What is the most probable in the world? What is the most proof I have? The more proof I get, the more I believe in it. And yet, I never reach the pinnacle of certainty, the pinnacle of, okay, this is absolute. No doubt about it.
Okay, I've also
Guys, I'm going to duck out.
No, wait,
I'm going to duck out. I'm going to duck out.
out.
There's other things I want to talk about. There's other people.
Let me ask one more question.
You look after yourself.
You do.
Let me
Look after yourself, Pavlov. Yeah?
let me ask you one more question.
No, I've had enough
Can I
with
answer
them.
your
I've had
question
enough.
very simply in a different way? If you accept that
Hello. Once again, how are you?